Hi, welcome to Studio Story. I'm Phil Madeira. I'm a musician in Nashville, Tennessee, where I've been for about 34 years. And I've made my living writing songs for other artists like Garth Brooks and Amy Grant and the Civil Wars. And I've also been a studio musician, which means I play on all kinds of records, mainly playing keyboards, piano and organ, but also playing accordion and lap steel and guitar. And so I've had the wonderful opportunity, really of a lifetime, to play with so many of my heroes. I've been in Emmylou Harris's band for the last 13 years, I believe. We've even got a gig coming up in a couple of days. And that's just probably been the most important thing of fulfilling the dream that I had for my life that I couldn't have even defined 50 years ago. If you had told me I would be playing with my heroes, I would have been shocked. But that's the sum total of a dream that a guy who was 21, 22 years old had in college. And so I'm a blessed guy, super grateful, and I'm happy to be here speaking about my life. You know, I graduated in high school in 1970, and I was a drummer at the time, and I really had that dream to be able to play and make a living out of it, but it seemed really like a pipe dream. And so I went to a conventional college. I went to a little religious college in Indiana, and I was an art major. I'm a pretty good painter, but I really had to entertain what a normal life would be. And so I got on that path to start making a living like a grown-up. And but I had bands in college, and so I had that outlet. And I always thought, well, music will just be an outlet for me. And then one evening I went to a concert at a friend's insistence. I had no interest in the concert he was saying, let's go to, but he just kind of bullied me into it. And he wanted me to hear a guitar player that he just thought was astounding. And in fact, the guy was really great. And afterwards, I spoke with this musician, and he said to me, you know, I think you and I are going to be in a band someday together. And I thought, well, that's kind of weird, but sure. And I stayed in touch with this fellow, and indeed, in 1976, I joined his band, and we toured nationally. And so I knew I was on the road to a career at that point. And we were involved in kind of this, in a church, and they took all the money, but you know, sometimes that's how it goes. And eventually I left that situation and wound up moving to Nashville. And that was the boldest move of my life, to actually come to Nashville, Tennessee. I was from Rhode Island. And to take my wife and move house was pretty intense, all in the interest of what else am I going to do with my life? So now all these years later, I'm 70 years old and I'm still doing this, probably more than I've ever done it. You know, I'm on a roll. Collaboration in this business is really important. And when I moved to Nashville, I came with the dream of being a solo artist. And I think that most people come here thinking they will be a solo artist. And as it turned out, I wound up, everyone I would meet wanted to sing my song. They weren't all that interested in hearing me sing my song, which was okay. And so I gradually became known as a songwriter and for other people. And that was great. I was just happy to be in the game. And I wound up co-writing songs because most of us who move here as songwriters, we write them by ourselves. And the most common way to success in monetary terms and in commercial terms is co-writing. Get another person's spin on the idea that you have. And I think this is great in life. You know, you have some idea in life. Well, that idea can be expanded by, you know, someone else's opinion. And it can also be crushed by someone else's opinion. So you have to have a lot of fortitude. You have to have equal balances of hubris and humility to accomplish anything in town, and have good relationships and still feel fulfilled with what you're doing. So for me, collaboration has been very important. And the other thing that I find interesting, and I often tell people, pay attention to your dreams, because my dream was to come here and make my records, Phil Madeira records. And instead I would see my name on someone else's record as a songwriter or as a musician or as a producer. I produce a lot of records. And, but what's interesting to me is that I had a record deal in maybe 1984 or 5. I made a record that I wasn't particularly fond of. In fact, I made it for a record company, for a market, and I found myself being molded into the thing that needed to fit into a world that I didn't fit into. And I was really trying to be like a rock guy, and I'm more of a rootsy guy. If you listen to my records, because I do make them, they're more New Orleans oriented. They're more like Dr. John or Randy Newman or something like that. And so, so initially, you know, after I made that record, I thought, I don't want to do this again. I waited 10 years and I put out an independent record, just guitar, dark, you know, it was really coming out of my heart. And then I did another one. And then for another 10 years, I got busy. I worked with Emmylou. I worked with a guy named Buddy Miller, who's an important name in our industry. And all the while I'm learning, I'm absorbing. I have to sing harmony with Emmylou Harris. I better be singing as well as I can, right? So what's interesting to me is that in, I don't know, maybe 2010 or 11, well, a little earlier than that, I decided I wanted to make a record of kind of sort of like hymns, but not Christian music. I had been in that world, and I found, for me, that world was constricting and isolating. And so, but I did want to make a positive, loving statement of who I believe God might be, and lean more towards love than judgment. And so I created a record called Mercyland, Hymns for the Rest of Us. And the first person I asked to be part of that was Emmylou. And I figured if she's on this thing, I had a pretty good feeling a lot of people were going to be on it. And she was great, you know. She was like, absolutely. She's a good friend. I mean, she's not a boss so much as she is a bandmate and a friend. Well, then I invited the Civil Wars, who were on their way up, and of course they became huge for a little bit till they broke up. And I invited a dear friend, a jazz legend named John Scofield, to be part of this. And I just kind of gathered, cherry-picked people to be on this thing, and made a beautiful record. And I've made 2 of them actually. But what happened was, somebody said to me, don't you think it's time you started playing your own music again? And so that record created enough interest in me as a solo artist that I could kickstart a record, which is what independents do now. And so I started making records again. And gosh, I think I've done 8 or 9 in the last decade. I've got one in the can right now. But if I'm going to say anything to whoever's listening, it's like, pay attention to your dreams. Life will get in the way of everything. But for me, the stuff that got in the way was beautiful stuff. It taught me. It was my teachers. Your enemies are your teachers. Your naysayers are your teachers. And your kids, if you have kids like I do, they're your teachers. And life is your teacher if you want to listen. And all that has led me to, right now, I'm writing the best songs I've ever written. I'm playing in a band called The Ascendants, which is a bunch of guys, more or less in my decade range. And we're making this great music. We're kind of blown away by it. You don't have to stop. And that's the beauty about being self-employed. If I'm going to stop, it's because I fired myself. Anyway, pay attention to your dreams. A lot of songwriters, a lot of authors. I've written a book that's been published, and I just finished my next one. A lot of authors and a lot of writers sit down every day. They carve out that space, however long they wish to write for, and that's what they do. And for me, I've always operated more off of intuition, and so what makes me create, it might be sitting down at my piano or with a guitar and discovering a chord that makes me say, oh, and that may lead to a song. Oftentimes, a lyric is going to come out of a very personal place. I've got a record called Hornet's Nest that is, I love it. And it's super jazzy and it's deep musically, it's funky. But the lyrical content is all pretty hard. It all came out of conflict, like relationships that aren't working. And so if I'm going through something, it's going to lead to a song. That doesn't mean the world will ever hear that song, but that's what's going to happen. In terms of discipline, it's almost interesting to be asked about that, because the one thing that I have found is my job, and I've thought about this probably since I turned 65, and that is, my job is moving. My job is motion, keeping my body in motion. And so every day I try to walk, well, they say 10,000 steps is what they want from you, right? But I do a hike, and I've got a friend who's also a musician, Steve Hindlong, who's a fellow creative. Every day we try to hit the trail at least 5 days a week. And out of that has come music that we've created together. So in terms of the creator, that's the most important part of my routine is walking every day. And then I do a little thing on Instagram. I try to do this every day where I sit at my piano, I put the phone up, and I just play, warts and all. I might play Just a Closer Walk with Thee, or some old New Orleans type hymn, or a Beatles cover, or I'll make something up. And you have to keep active. Keep your mind active. I play Words with Friends all the time. It probably sounds like a waste of time, but I don't think it is. And I paint. So I was just asked a question as a songwriter. I did some Zoom thing with the University of Virginia, and they were saying, what do you do about writer's block? And I said, well, I actually never get writer's block. They were like, you don't? And I said no, because I don't focus entirely on writing songs. I go through phases. I go through a season where, okay, oh, I'm so motivated to write right now, and I'll be doing that. And then I'll go through the season of recording that record that I just wrote. And then I'll go through a season of, man, I got to paint. And I've got on my back deck, I've got an easel and I've got canvas, and I'll just paint. And, or I've got the book thing, like I just finished a new book. I think I'm finished. I want my daughter to read it and she'll tell me whether I've finished it or not, or whether it finished me. But I have found that all the disciplines in the arts, if you have the ability to dabble in as many as you can, they will feed each other. They will keep your mind, the wheels turning. And I'm just fortunate that I can do a few things that aren't just one. I understand writer's block, but if I suppose maybe I have writer's block and just don't know it, and that's why I'm painting. So who knows? Your guess is as good as mine. I think the most important thing, in fact, I know the most important thing probably in any business, but certainly in the music business and in the creative business, is community. And it's interesting to me when I encounter someone who feels like they are self-made. And you will encounter a lot of that in this business. A lot of people who are very self-entitled and feel like, hey, the whole oyster is mine, and it's easy to get caught up in your own thoughts about how something needs to be, but you really do need a community. You really do need opinions that oppose yours. So I can approach this from a few angles, and probably all of them are saying the same thing. But I will say, as a songwriter, my greatest successes in terms of a song that actually has been heard and made money and has had a life beyond itself, those have all come through collaboration. Those have all come from co-writing with another person. And then as a record producer, I've marked my success not so much in commerciality or even in the money that I've made, but emotionally, where do I land in a situation? And so 25 years ago, for example, I made a record on someone. She was on a major label, and I really did the thing I wanted to do. I don't even know if she liked her record. I don't even know if she finds it listenable now. And I don't know if it is, because I'm not listening to it. So it's really important, if you're focused on record production, that you remember, once you've done that record, it's unlikely that you, the producer, are going to listen to it again. Whereas the artist, the idea that you fought the artist for and you won, now she's got to live with that idea. She hated that Gretsch guitar you wanted to put on there, and she let you know, but you said, no, you're going to learn to love it. That's my story. 25 years ago, my way or the highway. And now I serve that artist. If I'm working with someone, I might even think she's not making the greatest idea, or he's not making, whomever. It's not my record. I'm just trying to really deliver something that that person can live with. And so if you go into this industry with, again, some hubris, some humility, the low-hanging fruit, there's a ton of stuff you can learn by just that rejection. Think of that rejection as, oh, that's low-hanging fruit. It's actually going to teach me something. And so I'm grateful for the community. I am grateful for everyone who's ever hired me. I'm grateful for everyone who's ever fired me, although I can't think off the top of my head who might that be. Anyway, you are not going to get anywhere without somebody else. Don't forget it. Anyway, thank you for listening to my studio story. I hope it gave you something today, but it's really been fun doing this, and I wish you a wonderful day.